Disgusting sex acts, a wild scene, and extreme violence. Day 2 of Sean Combs' criminal trial saw the beginning of the long-awaited testimony of Cassandra Ventura, the star witness of this case. Well, the second day of Sean Diddy Combs' blockbuster sex trafficking trial unfolded with definitely gripping and often harrowing testimony from his former girlfriend, Cassandra Ventura, who took the stand as the prosecution's star witness. For nearly 6 hours, she testified. And I'm going to tell you right now what she testified to based on what we were reading in that courtroom.
The streets are talking, the courtroom's heating up, and the empire that once looked untouchable, it's starting to shake at the core. But what happens when the collapse doesn't start with an outsider, when it begins from within? That's the storm brewing around Christian Combs, aka King Combs, Sean Diddy Combs' firstborn, the heir to Bad Boy, the smooth-talking, velvet-suited, always-fly son who was groomed to carry the legacy. But now, his name is showing up in sealed court memos. And word is, he's been talking to the feds. You heard that right. Diddy's own son might be cooperating in the biggest celebrity criminal case of our era. According to law enforcement insiders, Christian's been quietly meeting with prosecutors behind closed doors. No press, no posts, no Instagram hints. Just 2 confirmed sit-downs in early April, both with his own legal team by his side. Now, there's a sealed memo floating through the Southern District of New York. And guess what's in it? Expected testimony from a close family member. Multiple sources say it's him. Let that sink in. This ain't just some messy family fallout. This is straight-up courtroom warfare. Because Diddy's not walking into a minor civil suit. He's facing federal charges: sex trafficking, racketeering, conspiracy, money laundering. Homeland Security already raided both his LA and Miami estates back in March, and now the prosecutors are building their case like a fortress. Devices were seized, records pulled, and hidden in that digital goldmine, over a dozen private conversations between Diddy and Christian. Now the feds want confirmation, live, under oath, in front of a jury. We're talking 7 years of parties, from 2015 to 2022.
It was something. It wasn't just alleged psychological torment, physical abuse, sexual exploitation at the hands of Sean Combs. Now remember, she is coming in there, 8.5 months pregnant, coming in after the testimony of 2 other witnesses. There is a lot to get into. We're going to give you a comprehensive breakdown of every major moment from today's proceedings, because as you know, there are no cameras in that courtroom. There is no audio of what happened, but we got the next best thing. We got Long Crimes reporter Elizabeth Milner, who was inside the
private jets, yacht weekends in Biscayne Bay, all-white Hamptons gatherings with exclusive guest lists and even more exclusive agendas. Events that prosecutors say weren't just parties, they were pipelines. And Christian allegedly helped run the logistics. Encrypted messages reportedly show him organizing luxury charters, booking celebrity passengers, and approving payments from shell companies tied to Bad Boy Entertainment. In fact, 2 invoices just dropped with his signature on them. One for a yacht rental, another for elite-level catering. The receipts are surfacing, and they ain't looking good. But here's where it gets heavy. Christian hasn't been charged. Not yet. Which got folks speculating. Did he cut a quiet deal? Is he flipping to protect himself? Or is he just trying to break away from a crumbling dynasty before the whole thing burns? Former DEA agents and legal consultants are already weighing in, saying once those devices were seized, anybody who had access to funds, travel manifests, or post-party payouts became a person of interest. And Christian? He's got fingerprints on all 3. Diddy's legal team, meanwhile, is in full damage control. Lead attorney Aaron Sussman called this a new low, accusing prosecutors of weaponizing family ties to taint the case. He begged Judge Subramanian to review the sealed testimony before opening statements begin. The judge wasn't moved, said he'll wait to hear from Christian himself. That might happen as early as jury selection. Let's be clear, this is unheard of. Family testifying against family in a high-profile trial like this? That's nuclear. Especially when the one testifying used to walk red carpets beside the accused, smiling in matching fur coats, dripped out in iced chains and custom Rolexes. Christian wasn't some distant cousin. He was part of the brand, the face of the future. Now he's potentially the voice that cracks it all open. Inside Black Hollywood, reactions are split. Some say Christian's being brave, doing what's right. Others, they see betrayal.
That courtroom, witnessing firsthand everything that happened today. Elizabeth, thank you so much for coming on. I know this has already been an exhausting day, particularly about what you heard in that courtroom. We will get to that. Before we even get into the testimony, real quick, is it just insane out there again? Are we seeing tons of people, reporters, spectators? Just tell us what the scene looks like right now.
The scene honestly kind of mirrored day one, which was opening statements. You know, day two was really no different. A lot of people trying to get inside that courthouse, a lot of people trying to get inside that courtroom, especially for the...
They say he's caving under pressure, helping prosecutors rip apart a black empire that helped shape the culture. But here's the thing. The culture been asking for truth. And now that it might be coming from inside the house, suddenly people don't want to hear it? Veteran journalists are calling it a moment of reckoning. Because whether you loved or hated Diddy's energy, you can't deny his influence. From Mary J. to Jay-Z, Usher to Beyoncé, his parties were the gravitational pull around which the music industry rotated. But now, prosecutors are saying those same parties were more than just champagne and flashing lights. They're calling them recruitment zones. That's right. They're accusing Diddy of building his operation in plain sight under the glow of red carpet flashbulbs and poolside influencers. And Christian? He allegedly helped hold the clipboard. Now let's talk about that money trail, because that's where it gets real messy. Financial records show $74 million moved through a maze of 17 shell companies between 2016 and 2023. Funds hit accounts in Delaware, Nevada, the British Virgin Islands. Some transfers went straight to private aviation companies. Others covered beachfront rentals and enhanced security. One even came from the tequila division, $900,000 wired to a media company that hadn't operated in years. A day later, that same amount paid for a private jet carrying 8 unidentified guests to the Bahamas. That trip? It's now known as White Sands Weekend, a name all over the indictment. Court documents say that's where several of the most damning incidents happened. And guess whose name shows up approving the yacht rental? You already know. Now, Diddy's lawyers are calling it all standard business expenses, said these are celebrity events, and logistics like charters, catering, and confidentiality agreements are common. But prosecutors say this wasn't just about throwing parties, it was about creating a system, a layered operation that made it look like showbiz on the outside, but was moving people, money, and silence behind the scenes. And when silence fails, they fall back on donations. That's right, some of Diddy's charitable contributions are under review too. The ledgers show millions gifted to institutions like Howard University and LA youth programs. But prosecutors flagged something shady, matching withdrawals from personal accounts that happened right after the donations. Experts call it circular financing, a classic way to look generous while recycling the money back to yourself. Just enough to quiet the banks, just enough to buy time. As all this unfolds, Christian is still active online, sort of. He's promoting his music, dropping teasers for his next EP. But his tour? Paused.
That courtroom, witnessing firsthand everything that happened today. Elizabeth, thank you so much for coming on. I know this has already been an exhausting day, particularly about what you heard in that courtroom. We will get to that. Before we even get into the testimony, real quick, is it just insane out there again? Are we seeing tons of people, reporters, spectators? Just tell us what the scene looks like right now.
The scene honestly kind of mirrored day one, which was opening statements. You know, day two was really no different. A lot of people trying to get inside that courthouse, a lot of people trying to get inside that courtroom, especially for the...
His team? Silent. And his legal status? Sealed. But courtroom insiders expect him to testify during the first week of trial. That's no accident. Prosecutors are playing chess. Opening with a family member? That's how you set the tone. Because juries listen harder when blood's involved. If Christian lays out the jet lists, the payments, the encrypted chats, it's over. The whole structure could collapse. But Diddy's lawyers aren't folding. They're sharpening knives. Sussman plans to go hard at every cooperating witness, especially Christian. They'll paint him as a confused kid, caught in the storm, pressured to protect himself. They'll say he didn't call the shots, that he didn't know what he was helping with. And maybe, just maybe, they'll say this whole thing is a twisted power grab by prosecutors desperate to make an example out of a black mogul. Yet as trial day creeps closer, one thing becomes crystal clear. This isn't just a court case. It's a generational moment. It's a war between legacy and law, between power and accountability, between a father and a son. And it's only getting started. The courtroom ain't even open yet, and it's already feeling like Judgment Day. Security tighter than the Super Bowl. Reporters camped out with their cameras ready to pounce. Inside, rows of polished benches, legal pads stacked, and prosecutors moving like they got nothing but time and receipts. Because now that the cat's halfway out the bag about Christian Combs, possibly flipping, every move, every breath, every sealed document is under the microscope. And while the world's eyes are glued to Diddy, pacing behind bars in a beige jumpsuit, it's Christian who's starting to steal the spotlight. Quietly, carefully, and maybe, just maybe, strategically. The whispers have turned into full-on roars now. People in the legal world are calling Christian the pressure point witness, the one who could collapse this whole house of cards from the inside out. Why? Because his testimony won't just be juicy, it'll be personal. He was there. He saw the infrastructure, lived in the lifestyle, and, according to prosecutors, may have signed off on parts of it. Think about that. We're not just talking about someone who attended parties. We're talking about someone who allegedly authorized the jets, arranged the yachts, confirmed catering payouts.
Big testimony that we were all expecting today, of course, that being Cassie Ventura taking the stand. And so it was a lot of people just trying to kind of weasel their way in through. I was able to get inside that courtroom really just with the luck and a prayer and also a little connections, which always helps in this case. But really, it's just madness over here at the courthouse. I mean, there's media campouts just extending across the block. A lot of public interest in this case as well, too, from people who just either want to get a glimpse of either Diddy, his family, just be inside that courtroom, just be inside the courthouse, even if they're in the overflow room and able to.
And helped keep the guest list clean and discreet. The feds ain't asking him what flavor Ciroc was on the bar. They want names, dates, payment routes, and encrypted messages. They want the blueprint. And guess what? Christian's name popped up on 2 separate invoices. One tied to a yacht rental that allegedly hosted one of the infamous Hamptons afterparties in 2020, and the other for a luxury catering gig handled by a company now linked to Bad Boy's shell firms. Prosecutors say both invoices hit accounts flagged for suspicious financial behavior, and both had Christian's signature. Now the defense is scrambling. They keep saying Christian was just the artist, just the son, just the face, not the operator, not the organizer. They're trying to paint him as a guy who signed what was given to him, no deeper involvement. But the timing of those signatures? They line up too perfectly with the dates and times Homeland Security already pulled from seized flight logs and encrypted chats. And the feds? They ain't playing. They say Christian's presence at multiple out-of-state events where alleged trafficking incidents occurred could put him right in the nexus of this whole thing. Not as a participant, but as a witness. A witness who knows too much. But here's the million-dollar question nobody can stop asking. Why would he talk? Because Christian ain't been charged with anything. Yet. He's not in cuffs. He's still out here teasing album drops, posting throwbacks, and keeping it light on social. But the reality is, that might be part of the strategy. People close to the case are whispering about a possible cooperation for immunity deal. Nothing signed officially, at least not publicly, but the timeline is suspicious. The raids hit in March. Christian stopped promoting any tour dates.
Kind of watch the proceedings that way, but there's definitely a lot of interest in the case, and I don't expect that to die down even throughout this week.
No, and this was expected with Cassandra Ventura taking the stand. Now, before we get to her testimony, the day actually started with finishing up the testimony, the cross-examination of Daniel Phillip. That is that male escort, male performer, I should say, who began his testimony yesterday. Talked about how Diddy allegedly paid him to have sex with Cassandra Ventura, all while Diddy was not only watching, but recording. And this happened to have, apparently happened.
Diddy's legal team started complaining about being kept in the dark. Then Christian quietly met with prosecutors twice in April. 2 weeks later, sealed memos hit the docket mentioning a direct family witness. And now, a full-blown nuclear-level trial is about to launch, with Christian potentially taking the stand first. The defense ain't having it. They're already moving to restrict questioning on any convos that could incriminate Christian. They're trying to protect him as both a witness and a son, knowing that once he testifies, there's no taking it back. Every word he says on that stand becomes history. Meanwhile, the financial web prosecutors laid out in their latest filing just made the whole case even messier. Over $74 million traced, 17 shell companies flagged, and tucked deep in those ledgers, personal donations that look more like cover-ups. One payment trail shows Diddy donating $450,000 to Howard University, and then quietly pulling a nearly identical amount from a separate offshore account the same week. That's not charity. That's money laundering in a tux. Prosecutors say it's called circular finance. Make it look like you're giving, but you're just looping your own cash back into your pockets. But Diddy's team says it's coincidence. Regular expenses, hospitality costs, high-end event planning, not criminal enterprise. Problem is, they said the same thing about the $900,000 that got wired from Diddy's tequila brand to a ghost media firm, and then paid for a jet that flew 8 unidentified passengers to the Bahamas. The same Bahamas trip mentioned in the indictment. The same White Sands weekend people keep talking about in whispers.
Several times, again, Combs is charged with racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking, transportation to engage in prostitution. So we're talking about coerced sexual performances. Key witness here. Elizabeth, what came out of cross-examination today of this witness?
Well, the cross-examination was continued by Xavier Donaldson, and it was interesting to kind of see him in action even yesterday as well as today, because he's a little feisty when it came to this particular witness. He was essentially questioning him on, returning to the...
And while the feds build that web tighter, big names in the industry are backing away fast. Diageo, the liquor giant behind Ciroc and De Leon, already cut ties last year. Now they're publicly saying there's no financial overlap remaining, and they're cooperating with investigators. Revolt TV's distancing itself too. They ain't trying to be caught in a legal ricochet. Christian's label, CYN Music Group, put out a one-sentence statement saying they respect the legal process. Translation: don't ask us nothing. And behind the scenes, insiders say the pressure is getting real. Diddy's team held a surprise board meeting last Friday to discuss selling off parts of Sean John and pausing a major Miami hospitality launch. Even some senior staff reportedly got furlough warnings, meaning if this trial drags on too long, there might not be a company left to save. And guess what? The feds just got approval to pull more bank records from JP Morgan this time, specifically tied to Diddy's marketing budgets. Allegedly, some of that money ended up funding late-night charters and security teams tied directly to the events at the center of this case. Prosecutors say they'll bring in flight mechanics, digital forensics experts, and ex-employees who claim Diddy's aviation logs were cleaned before audits, meaning names were scrubbed, paper trails vanished. Except now, they're popping back up through texts, encrypted chats, and hard drives they thought were wiped. And Christian? His name ain't just on the ledger, it's on group chats, on approval lists, on signatures that keep showing up next to dirty money. Whether he meant to be involved or not, his fingerprints are now all over the story. But this case isn't just about cash flow, it's about culture. Black Twitter is split right down the middle, one side screaming, "Protect King Combs," and calling him brave for breaking the family code. The other side accusing him of selling out his own blood to protect his image and avoid getting indicted himself. Hashtags are flying. Black Wall of Silence, #Truth Over Legacy, #Diddy Trial 2025. It's generational trauma, public loyalty tests, and legal strategy all tangled into one giant cultural mess. And behind it all, Diddy sits locked up in Brooklyn's MDC, denied bail, denied freedom, and denied that old power he once flexed like it couldn't be touched. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Stay tuned for our next video.